Alright, hey, how you doing? So, a couple people have asked me, since I've done my 4.6 stroker engine, it's a Golen engine swap on my Jeep. A lot of people have asked a bunch of questions on just what it was like doing the engine swap, what they needed, cost, unexpected costs, the drivability of this thing, fuel mileage, fuel economy. So I wanted to make a quick video. This is just a non-edited, quick one-shot video that I'm going to make, try and go over everything that I did with this. So this is my 2004 Jeep Wrangler. It is a X model, so it is a factory 4-liter. Came with 307 gears, which have been swapped out. I have 373. Pulled a set of axles out of an LJ, so it's Dana 44 rear, Dana 30 front, 373. 31-inch tires, 31 by 10s, 31, 10.5 by 15. And why it's important is gearing, speed, drivability, what you're going to see RPM-wise, what it's going to feel like driving down the road. It all matters. So ultimately, my original engine, I had 193,000 miles on it. Was driving down the road, and I had the piston skirt broke. So I was close to the house when it happened. The engine, I downshifted. The engine started making a tapping noise. I immediately got out of it. Checked around, checked the oil, checked everything. Everything looked good on it, but it was definitely making some engine noise, some tapping. So drove it home, probably less than 7 miles from where it occurred. Took it down to the Jeep dealership, had them do a compression test on it. Number 6 cylinder definitely was losing compression. So number 6 cylinder, ultimately, I lost an engine skirt. So at that point, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do a V8 swap or a diesel swap or even a stroker. And I'll be honest with you, what made me go to the stroker over a V8 or a diesel swap is because I'm not a fabricator. I'm not that good yet with fabricating. I'm still getting into this stuff. Turning wrenches and putting stuff together, I can do that. But as far as fabricating mounts or knowing what parts go where, that's just, I'm not there yet. So putting a diesel or a V8 kind of was very overwhelming for me. So when I come across these 4.6 stroker motors, it was a direct swap. The factory engine mounts, your factory transmission, factory flywheel, everything was a direct bolt-in replacement. So that was why I ultimately went with this. And the horsepower, so this dynoed at 273 horsepower and 333 foot-pound of torque. So, I mean, that's pretty close to your older 5.9 Magnum engines and things like that. Your older LS motors, the original V8s that came in out of, like a lot of people were putting early 2000 V8 LS motors in your Jeep. It's close. It's very comparable as far as horsepower ratio. So, and with that being said, none of the modifications to put this in. So, to me, it was a win-win. So, the engine is a Golen 4.6 stroker engine. I went up and picked it up from Chad, and he couldn't have been a more pleasant person. So if you're thinking about doing business with him, I would say do it 100%. The guy was outstanding. So he put the engine on the dyno for me when I got there. We ran it, dynoed it. He showed me everything right then and there. So there was no confusion when I got home. This was ready to go, drop-in engine. So let me give you let me show you real quick what it looks like in there. So, I mean, ultimately, it looks very stock. And that's kind of what I wanted. That's what I was going for. Chad's got this really cool valve cover on there, hiding underneath there. So, you know, you pop the hood, and to most people, you wouldn't think anything more than, hey, look, it's just a 4-liter underneath of here. But, yep, so some of the things that I opted for, I do have the stainless header, so I opted for that. And let's see, what else did I get? So the engine comes, when you get the engine's basically, let me show you what my old engine here looks like. So the engine comes in, and it looks, you know, it looks just like, well, take the exhaust manifolds off. I mean, that's what you get. You know, it comes ready to go with an oil filter on it, and your balancer on the front, valve covered oil pan, ready to drop in. But other than that, you have to put all of your components on, your drive components on. So that's not hard. It took me a few hours just to take my time, swap everything over, put the water pump on, your gaskets, your water pump, your thermostat housing. You know, just take your time and make sure that you're doing everything right. Bolt up your, you have to bolt up the exhaust header, and of course your intake manifold, which shares some bolts, so that's kind of a pain in the butt. But it's not too bad, you know, sitting on a stand or something like this. So, guys, I'm doing this out of my garage. I don't have an engine stand. I don't have a lift. I don't have a hoist. This is just right out of my garage. So, you know, if you guys can turn wrenches, you can do this. So, after I put all the components on the engine, you know, I got this Harbor Freight 1-ton engine lift. And I would say that was probably barely enough. It's not quite long enough if you want to try and keep the front end of your Jeep on. When you pull or put the new one in, you have to extend it out. I don't recommend that. It worked for me. I got away with it. But I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend probably the bigger hoist that they have there. Spend the extra money. It's a little more stable. And I did it without taking the front of my Jeep off. I took the radiator out, the fan shroud, coolant tank, washer fluid. Actually, washer fluid stayed. I even left the intake box. I didn't have to do anything with that. You know, it takes you some time, probably, for me anyway, being my first engine swap, took time to unplug all of your wiring harnesses, making sure that you undid the ground, made sure that everything was disconnected. You know, it definitely took some time. And then basically the wiring harness, I was able to fold all of the wiring harness over to this side of the engine, kind of droop it over. And the other thing that I wasn't kind of expecting or didn't know what to do with, your AC lines. So these are charged with Freon. You have to, the proper way is to vacuum down the Freon lines, and then you can disconnect them. So what I did was I disconnected them here off the pump, off the AC compressor pump, and then I was able to kind of just sit them off to the left-hand side here. And I disconnected my power steering and put the power steering pump up over here, and was able to take the whole engine with the flywheel, my clutch still mounted, and actually the fan was still on the engine as well. I was able to pull the engine out, set it off to the side, start swapping things over. Now, something else I will suggest, if you can take the fan off, take the clutch off, it's going to give you some more room to get that up and out. I did take the transmission off prior. I did not pull it with the transmission. I took the transmission in the transfer case off prior. Had that slid out off to the side, so I was just pulling just the engine. But it's very tight trying to get that engine up and out with the fan still on and the clutch on the back. So just understand that it's tight. Unless you take the rest of the coolers off the front, take your grill out and pull it straight out, then you have all the room in the world. So maybe I messed up, maybe it's easier to do that, but that's just how I did it. So swapped all the components over. Now some additional expenses, stuff you don't think about. You get this engine out, You know, this is, it's almost 20 years old, you know, so all your lines, your hoses, things like that, it's not that expensive to go out and replace it now. Buy the hoses now, buy the, you know, I got a new radiator lines, new radiator hoses, new heater core hoses. I put a new alternator on there at this point in time, which is not a big deal, but, you know, when you're doing this kind of work, you know, you might as well just spend the money now and do it right. So put all the components back on, drop the engine back in. This time when I put the engine back in, I did not have the fan, did not have the clutch on. I did that after the engine was in. It was so much easier. So I would definitely suggest doing that. The engine comes with 24-pound Bosch injectors. So you put the Bosch injectors in, and then you plug everything back up. All your sensors, all of your wiring harness, you just plug everything back in, and it runs off your stock computer. There is no tuning required. You do not have to take this anywhere. You don't have to have it tuned. You do not have to do anything. It is literally a turnkey engine, ready to go as soon as you get everything hooked up. I will say this, something that was also my fault, was not, I didn't do it correctly. Before you put the engine in, before you set everything in here, find top dead center, and then put your camshaft position sensor, which is down in there. You have to set that properly. That's not necessarily your engine timing, that's your fuel injector rail timing, but if you don't do that right, you're going to have problems. It won't start, it'll backfire, it'll act like it's out of timing. It's something simple to overlook, because when you're swapping stuff over, you're not paying attention to, oh man, did this go in a certain particular way. So that is one thing I will say that you have to pay attention to when you're putting it in, and make sure that your engine is at top dead center. Now, Chad does an excellent video on how to do that, and I followed his instructions online, and it fired up first shot. So no problems. So let's get into the cost a little bit. Let me set you back down here. Let's see here. Overall cost of the engine. I mean, it's steep. I mean, it's not cheap by any means. It was $6,800 for the engine, so it's not cheap. But what you're getting for that money is a turnkey, an engine with a warranty. Chad will he'll work with you if you have any questions with any of this. So you're getting more than just the engine. The ease of putting it in. There's a lot that comes with that price. So of course the extra costs, the exhaust manifold, you know, extra money. I did put a Banks Monster exhaust at the time when I was putting this in. Put a Banks Monster exhaust on here. I have the high flow water pump on there. Let's see. You know, obviously hoses, your alternator, like I put a new alternator on it. You know, new idler pulleys, new belts, like everything that you put into, all that stuff does add up. And if you're going to do an engine swap, you're going to do that stuff too. So when you guys think like, oh man, I'm going to throw a V8 in this thing, it's going to be a lot cheaper. I can get a V8 out of the junkyard for $500, $1,000. Well, that's great. But then you got to fabricate all your parts. You have to, you're going to be replacing all that stuff anyway. It adds up, you know. And if you're not mechanically inclined like that, it's going to catch you off guard. So I would probably say I probably have another $1,000 into the engine on top of everything else, just to have it the way it is right now. So it's a lot of money, but you know, it's also knowing that there's nothing going to fail or nothing should fail. You know, you've went over everything. So that's where I'm at with it. So anyway, let's see. Drivability. This thing runs like a stock truck. I mean, you start it up, it idles smoothly, it drives fine. It doesn't feel any different than a stock engine when you start this thing up and drive. I mean, it's very factory feel. It sounds amazing. It definitely has a different sound to it. There is kind of like It almost kind of sounds like a supercharger whine when you start it. And I asked Chad about that, and he says he gets that question all the time. That's normal. It's something in the valve train that's different, and so it's supposed to sound like that. But I'll tell you, it sounds amazing. Fuel economy. This is what everybody else wants to know too about fuel economy. So before I was getting, with my factory 4-liter, driving back and forth to work, I drove about 40 miles one way, 80-mile round trip every day on the highway, and it was a daily driver, and I was getting average like 16.7, almost 17 miles to the gallon, and I use a Fuelio app on my phone to track all that, and so the best I ever got was high 17s, but I was, if I dogged it around town, it would be like 14 miles to the gallon. So average was 16.6, 16.7 miles to the gallon. So that was the factory engine. So I was hoping that that would be the same with this engine, and I haven't really been able to do a lot of long runs with it yet. I've only got about 1,000 miles on the engine. But what I can tell you, just the driving around town, the opportunity to burn more fuel is definitely there. I'm getting, around town, I'm only getting about 13.5, 14 miles to the gallon, which is about a half mile to gallon, less than what I used to get. So your fuel economy will suffer. As far as highway driving, driving out to Western Maryland and back, I was getting, the best I could get was 16.5. So, when I was getting 17.5 before, now I'm only going to get about 16.5. So you will not get the fuel economy that you were getting before. Now I think that I could probably change out to some 33-inch tires, believe it or not. With the gearing that I have and with a taller tire, I probably would do better. Driving down the highway, I'm right around 2,400 RPM at 75 mile an hour. So I think if I put some different tires on there, if I put a taller tire on there, get my RPMs down a little bit, I probably could do better fuel economy wise. So there's that. So yeah, so I'm gonna start it up. I'm gonna walk you guys around it real quick. Maybe we'll do a little ride, and I'll show you like a test pull, show you what it feels like. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I don't know what the sound is coming through here. But it definitely has a different sound to it. That Banks exhaust hooked up under there. So let's do this. So I did warm this up prior to the video, only so that when I took it for a ride it wasn't cold. So you guys can see 194,000 miles. Everything on this truck works just like factory. I did put a slightly cooler thermostat. I put a 180-degree thermostat in there. And if you guys go with like a Moto Rad or something like that where they have a fail-safe thermostat, I did have one immediately get stuck on me, stuck open. So that was kind of a pain in the butt. So let me, let's do this. Let's go for a ride real quick, and I'll show you, kind of like do a quick pull on it and show you what this thing drives like. So, just driving this thing around town, like I said, you don't, it it doesn't feel like it's not all cammed up or anything. It does have a custom cut cam from TJ Golen for the fact that you're going to, you know, you got bigger injectors as a stroker motor. He's got this thing set up so that, you know, you don't have any emissions issues with it. If you guys can see, I mean, I've been driving around for 1,000 miles, no check engine light, no emissions problems. So this thing is very drivable. Going out Western Maryland, occasionally I'll pull a little 8-foot pop-up camper out there, and one of my things was, you know, can I go up these mountains in 4th gear? What kind of speed, what kind of power do I have with this thing? And I can tell you, going out Western Maryland, I only had to downshift to 4th on one particular mountain going out there. So it definitely has the torque that you need for, you know, going up west, you know, out in the mountains or whatever you need, wheeling. Now this Jeep, I don't rock climb with this thing. I don't go rock climbing. I do some mild trails. You know, it's a 2-inch lift, per comp lift, and I do some off-roading a little bit, but not you know, I'm not a competitive rock crawler. So, all right, so let me stop it here. Let's do a quick pull. I'll show you what this engine's kind of capable of doing. That 2nd gear wide open, 3rd gear. Woo. So you can see this thing's got some power. Definitely makes some power, and it will go. I mean, this thing will put you in the back of the seat. Now it's not going to roast the tires off. If you guys think you're going to get in this thing and you're going to be burning the tires off, you know, like you got a LS supercharged engine, that's not the case. I mean, you're not going to get that. But I will tell you, it is a lot of power, and it is fun to drive. And I mean, this is slightly uphill, and the thing just drives and pulls amazing. So like I said, now this is 31-inch tires, 373 gears, so everybody's going to have a little different, you know, opinion as far as you know, what it's going to do on the road. But I will tell you, it's a, you definitely feel it. If you're going from a stock 4-liter to a 4.6, you're going from less than 200 horsepower to 275. You know, almost 100 foot-pound of torque more. So it's definitely there where you need it, and it's a great driving engine. So I hope that answers any question you guys might have about doing a 4.6 stroker engine swap. If there's something I missed, you know, leave me a comment. I'll see if I can answer it. But this is just something that, when I was looking to put this engine in, there wasn't a lot of videos out there. There was, you know, a handful of guys out there doing donuts with them or doing drive-bys and stuff, and that's not what I was looking for. I wanted to know, you know, installation. What's it going to be like when you drive this thing? What's it going to change fuel economy wise? You know, what's the ultimate cost of this thing? So any unexpected things that you know, you come across. I will say, if you looked at the video of the engine, like inside, all of your wiring harnesses, all of the plastic looms, all of your factory, everything, it's plug and play, guys. Everything it literally will go right back. The only issue that I found that I had, your valve cover is held down with bolts instead of studs now, and what that does is now your a lot of your fuel rail and some other things to actually like attach to those studs, and they're not there anymore, so they kind of just are sitting there, sitting in place. So that's one thing that I haven't really figured out what to do with. It's not moving, it's not going anywhere. Everything seems to be sitting exactly where it's supposed to. So I don't think that's a major concern. But that is something that I noticed when I put this back together, that I was like, oh man, I don't have a place to mount that stuff anymore. So I hope that this has been educational, or you guys got the information that you needed from this. Like I said, if you guys got any questions, let me know. But Chad Golen is the owner of the Golen 4.6 stroker, and if you guys call him with any questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them too. I know there was currently a 3-month lead time on these engines. When I bought this was back in October, and he only builds 14 a month, so it's a 3-month lead time right now. I know he said his prices are going to have to go up because of the cost of material and supply and demand, that kind of deal. So price is probably going to go up a little bit. But if you guys are thinking about this between a V8 swap, and you're not ready to modify like I was, it's a great solution. So hope you guys like my video. Yeah, thanks a lot.